Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today in the studio, we have Craig Scharton. Now, Craig has been a guest before on the program. He's the owner of Peeves Public House. He used to be the downtown czar, quote unquote, but he was also a former Fresno City Councilmember. And now he's here in the studio to talk about the recent election and elections in general. Craig, welcome to the program.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure. And you know, the reason why I wanted you on today is because you've done this. You know how they say, been there and done that? With elections, you've been there and done that. You served on the council.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Until you've seen your name on the ballot, it's a very different thing. Boy, the night that you turn in that paperwork, you do not sleep that night. It's a scary thing. Well,
and what a lot of people may not know that you served on the city council. When, where?
This is a long time ago. It was 87 to 91, and I was 25 when I was elected.
So, did you learn a lot from that experience?
Oh my gosh. I think about it all the time. I mean, there are so many lessons, things that I would do or things that I wouldn't do again. I mean, but just, you know, whenever you jump into the ring, you're going to learn things. You know, as long as you're sitting in the bleachers, you're not going to get as many lessons from it.
Well, an election night. We just had an election,
yeah,
and there was some surprises. Mm-hmm. There was some down to the wire, which even as we record the show, it's down to the wire. But election night, what is going through your head as a candidate?
You know, it's just not even real. I mean, you're talking to people, but it's almost like you're in a dream state. You know, you're just kind of, time has slowed down. You're dying to get results. You're dying to understand the math, so hopefully you have someone around you who can say, all right, you know, if you win X amount for the next few, you know, precincts that come in, you're doing okay or whatever. But you kind of, it's like going to the doctor. You know, if there's something scary going on, you take someone with you because you're not paying attention as much as you think you are. And afterwards, someone will ask you a question, you'll go, oh shoot, I should have thought of that. So you need to have someone rational, non-emotional around you that night.
Do you ever really know what the outcome is? I mean, we're down to the wire here with a couple of races.
Right.
Some have gone from one thinking they won at the end of the election.
Right.
Now come 2 weeks later and they're not on top anymore.
I know, and I mean, you know, votes that are within 10, 20, 50, I mean, you know, relatively small number of votes, which just tells you how much more it matters that everyone gets out and vote. Every vote does count.
Who voted in this past election?
You know, what I'll tell you is it was the worst turnout nationally in like 70 years. It was 1942.
Wow. Since
we had a worse turnout for an election across the board. I think there are only 5 or 6 states that got more than 50% of the eligible voters, but 37 across the country, and California wasn't one of those states.
That is incredible. So people aren't voting.
Yeah, not at this midterm. You know, they're more likely to vote if there's a president not running for re-election, so you really have the big race going on, and then, you know, every other race just adds to it at that point. But we didn't have governor, we did have governor, but we didn't have a competitive race, and we didn't have a president, so just 30% of those eligible.
Wow, and that's not even in the population.
Yeah, so you're already talking about half, 30% of half the people voted, you know, so it's really pretty low.
Now, a lot of people I talked to were disinterested, and they didn't vote. And should we care, though, what's going on, like in Washington, D.C.? Because we saw across the nation that a lot of change occurred in Washington, D.C. So should we care?
Well, I mean, I think it matters, you know, that now both sides of the legislature are controlled by the Republican Party, and the president is a Democrat, and that's not unusual. We tend to like to balance things out and not have everyone from the same party at the same time, because then you can do a whole bunch of stuff. And we tend to like to have government that's slow and a little bit responsive to us. So, but it definitely matters. You know, it's a democracy. It's the first, you know, experiment, you know, since the Greeks to have democracy. And, you know, part of it is you look around the rest of the world and you see much higher voter turnout than us, and yet we're world leaders. So I think we need to step up and act like leaders.
And one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, a lot of candidates I know, and even when I was younger, there were elder people who said, anybody who wants to run for office, build that campaign war chest. And I didn't know what they were talking about. But the war chest is the amount of cash on hand.
Right.
Now, a lot of times they won't use it all, but why is it so important to have such a big cash at hand?
Well, I think it's really unfortunate. I think, you know, I'm sorry to see that be the case. But, you know, so much of it is advertising, you know, the cost for printing. You know, now people buy these CDs of which people vote and which people don't vote, so they can target their resources to the ones that are the most likely to vote. TV ads, radio ads. In fact, the media, who love to complain about how much money goes into campaigns, they actually raise their rates during campaigns so they can make more money off of it. So they're complicit in this as well, right? So if they're raising the cost of TV spots or radio or newspaper, they're just making it that more expensive to campaign, which means candidates have to go out and raise more money, which is not good for democracy.
But does that turn people off from running? So let's say that I'm, whatever office I'm in,
Yes.
and I have $500,000 at my disposal. Will that turn somebody off? Will someone will look at that and say, you know what, I may not challenge this person?
Oh, sure. Well, and there are rules in place that are kind of screwy too, that allow people, say you ran for city council and you got $200,000 and you spent $100,000 of it, and now you want to run for another office, they'll even let you take that money and put it into the other campaign, which I think is really not very fair, because they might not have wanted to support you for Congress, but they thought you would have been a good city councilman. And now you get to move that money over to another account. I do think it has a chilling effect on people running, because it's very intimidating if someone has a huge war chest. You know, how are you going to raise that kind of money?
And so what I'm hearing is it really does matter, because sometimes people get excited and say, you know what, I'm going to run for this office, whether it be city council or whatever the office may be. And they say it doesn't matter how much money the opponent has, and they go gung-ho, and then they realize, you know what I get myself into. That happens, right?
It does, but you know, I can tell you, I won an election and I lost an election. And I won an election when I had something like $35,000, $40,000, and then I lost the election when I had $150,000.
Interesting.
So, and you know, they're really, you know, especially at like the city council level, you know, the lower the level, lower down the food chain you are, I think the more ability you would have to have a grassroots campaign. But we also saw with Obama in his first election, the first use really of social media at a really professional high level, where he was getting dollars and $10 for tweets and emails and things like that. So that really kind of democratized campaign finance as well.
Why didn't you decide to take the next step? I mean, we have a lot of candidates that start at city council, get some name ID, go up to the next level, and go up to the next level. What happened that...
Well, I didn't get reelected at city council. In fact, that was a time when the new city hall got built, and even though I didn't support that, it was really a symbol of, we don't like what's going on, they're spending too much money, and everybody that I served with was out within a 2-year period. And really, I didn't like the running part.
See,
you know, that's really daunting. I mean, how are you going to go away from your family and your job and walk precincts for 6 months? I could do it when I was 25, but later in life, when you have a house and a kid and all that, that's taking a lot away.
I mean, you have a lot of name ID out there. People know you. You own a business, and you know, But it sounds like it was hard work for you, and it would be hard work for you to run for office again. Do you think people underestimate that? I mean, we get a lot of people who get really excited about running for office. Do you think that sometimes the surprise hits in?
Yeah, well, I think that's important. I think, I'm an idealist, I guess, but I'm also have to be a realist. I wish more people would run not to win necessarily, but to promote their ideas or their values or their vision for the city. And then it was a competition between ideas and values, and then you just let people decide. So it's not a sport where one person wins and loses. It's an open dialogue among, I think the general plan should be this way, you think it should be that way, let the people decide, it's no big deal. And I'd like to see more of that kind of community participation that was about making, or how you would make Fresno or California or the United States better, as opposed to, when the worst thing I hear is a candidate who says, we'll do anything to win. I don't want that person. I want a person who believes in fairness and bettering their city, not tearing people down and running negative campaigns either against their candidate, or a lot of times we get people who run negative campaigns against our city, and I really don't like that at all. Why would we elect someone who perpetuates negativity about our city, state, or our country?
You brought up negative campaigning, and that gets a lot of attention out there. What is it that leads a candidate? I mean, it could be several things, but in your opinion, what is it that would lead a candidate to go negative?
Well, if I reached over and punched you right now, what's your next response?
I'm going to punch you back.
Exactly. And so all it takes is one guy to start a fight, one person to start a fight, or one political consultant to run one ad or one mailer, and then the other political consultant and team says, we can't take that, we've got to punch back. And then the next thing you know, they're both down rolling around in the gutter, getting mud all over them, and really, I think, making people think less about democracy than they should. And if they ran positive campaigns, I think it would tell people, democracy is working, I want to participate in it. When they see the junk, they just say, forget it, I'm staying home, like they did last election.
Talk a little bit about just, is it a tough process to get your name on the ballot? I mean, what are the steps? Because I think some of the steps may be cumbersome to some people.
Yeah, getting your name on the ballot isn't that hard. For any local election, you have to live in your district that you're going to serve. So it could be a council district, or if you're supervisor, or if you're running for mayor, you have to live in the city. Other than that, it's 20 signatures from registered voters within that district, and you get to put your name on the ballot.
But winning is another thing.
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's why you end up with 12 people running for mayor, and then you have the runoff, and then you have 2 people.
How important is an organized campaign? I mean, people who run campaigns, they're good at what they do. How important is having that knowledge base?
Well, I do think there are some interesting things that you probably would want to know beforehand. You have to have campaign finance, reporting and those kinds of things, and their rules, so you're going to want to learn about that. And then also putting together, whether it's volunteers or a paid staff, who's going to help. And I like to start from the end. Who's going to clean up after the election night party, right? Who's going to be at the election night party? Who's going to get voters out on election day, drive people to the polls if they need it? And you back up, who's going to call when the absentee ballots go out, and you go kind of backward through that whole process. And it can be a fair amount of work.
This may be a tough question to ask, but there may be 2 candidates that really don't know each other, and then they get into it, and then they end up hating each other. I mean,
right.
Does that happen? And what do you think causes that?
Yeah, well, it's back to, we turn it into a sport rather than, so you and I are running, boy,
we're a great relationship.
Right, and that would be really cool for the voters, because we could say, no, I totally disagree with Sevag on that one, but if you agree with him, that's fine too, and that would be much more collegial. I think our two-party system and our competitive system just means the other person's an idiot and I'm a genius, and then they think just the opposite. And that's not very good. I do think things have gotten worse that way during my adult lifetime. I mean, most of the time when I was on the city council, I could have gone out to lunch, on council day with any one of my colleagues and had a really nice time and enjoyed their company. And that's probably true, but I see in Washington and Sacramento especially, where it's just so much mudslinging that I find it hard to believe that they went out golfing like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did, the majority leader of Congress and the president, opposite parties. They even went to Ireland together, I
Interesting
believe.
trip.
Yeah.
Do you regret doing what you did? I mean, you were elected at a very young age.
Yeah.
I mean, and now looking back, do you regret it? I mean, has it helped you?
No, it's phenomenal. I wish more people had the experience of doing that, especially, I'm wired to get stuff done. I don't want to sit up there to feel better about myself or be popular or whatever, certainly not on the city council. But there's stuff that you can do at that level that you can't do in any other part of life, even business or nonprofit or whatever, where you really get to make decisions that help people. So an example was I got to author a local law, which requires parking lots to be shaded 50% by trees.
Interesting.
So when a new shopping center gets built, it has trees and shade in it to keep the asphalt from getting so hot and creating a heat sink, and then you can park your car under a shade tree and it greens our city. Right? You can't do that any other way, but I can do it. And really, other than your viewers, no one else knows I did that, and I don't even care about that. But what's great is
I didn't know
sometimes
you did that.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. It doesn't even matter. But I know when I drive down and I see this building get torn out on Blackstone and a new one comes up and the trees are there, or on Shaw Avenue or something, and our city's a greener place, I get to know that I did something like that. And where else do you get that? I mean, it really is a very special thing. I had to get the votes, I had to get community support, I had to find other ordinances from other cities like Sacramento to find out what would work here and get all of that passed and talk to the media and all of that. I was 25, 26 years old. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, it's
Great
really
experience,
very
it
lucky.
sounds like.
Yeah, really very, very satisfying work if you do it well.
So now I would like you to put your business owner hat on and answer the question that I hear all the time, because I'm a big advocate for people voting. Educate yourself, go out there and vote. But a lot of people say, it doesn't bother me, it won't impact me, it won't help me, I can't make a difference, nothing will change. Now, using your business owner's hat, now do you see a difference in people when they get elected and their votes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're affecting us all the time, whether it's how insurance affects you, whether you could get insurance with a pre-existing condition. That mattered in the last two presidential elections ago, whether it's you believe in minimum wage, whether you believe we need more water for our area, who's responding to the drought, all these different things. I mean, they really do affect you, from parks to schools to your own personal insurance or your taxes. All those things matter. So, we really need smart people to run, and we really need people to get out there and find out who the smart people are and vote for them, for crying out loud. And one of the criteria I usually have is I hope that the people who run have already been serving our community. Even though I was 25, I'd already been on 2 nonprofit boards. So that's just part of my family ethic. So you're involved in the community. I mean, the worst politicians are the ones who start their community service in politics.
When it's time to run, all of a sudden they're not,
Yeah, all of a sudden, and now they're going to learn how to be on a board, and they're going to learn how to listen to people, and they're going to learn how to prioritize. It doesn't work that way.
Did you see in your experience people change? Because sometimes I hear that, you know
yeah.
what, I hear it, and that someone was this way before, they got elected, and all of a sudden they're a completely different person.
Oh, it pains me to say so, but it even happened to me. I mean, it's just embarrassing. It really happens to everyone. And if you stop and think about it, so now you're Sevag and, you know, people listen to you and all of that, but all of a sudden you're making decisions, and so no one wants to make you mad, so they tell you how smart you are. And every time there's an issue, the media asks for your opinion, and pretty soon you can start believing that, even though it's just Fresno, it's not Washington, D.C. And I do see every elected official go through some kind of a transformation that way. And so I think about how to solve problems, and I think what every elected official should do is create some kind of a mentor group around them that just kicks their butts.
Keeps them down
all the time. Like, hey, dummy, remember you're just the kid who came through and threw my newspaper a few years ago. Don't get too big for your britches, and settle down and remember you need to be a humble public servant and get back to work and forget, you know, about what kind of suit you wear or who thinks you're cute or whatever, you know, get back to work. And I think that's something that, you know, in some respects we all need, you know, a CEO needs that, you know. How many power-hungry people have we seen in religion, right, that have fallen? You know, all of these fields, when you kind of get up to the top, you start believing your own baloney. And that's really dangerous. And that's where the old Zen master would come along with a bamboo switch and just whack you on the head and go, snap out of it.
Do you miss it? I mean, you know, you're involved in a lot of things. I mean, I see your name everywhere. You were the downtown czar, so you were involved in downtown revitalization. And then, you know, I would go to a party and I would see you at the party, and then I would come to your restaurant and you would be at your restaurant. So
I'm actually, there are three of me.
But do you miss the council? And
you know, I think the part that I miss is having a direct influence on policy. When I was young, I went to every party I got invited to, I think, you know. I could go into hanging out with Republicans and then go to a union party and then go to an environmentalist event and then, you know, go to, you know, a farming event and everything else. I don't feel that way anymore. I like to go home with my dog now. But, you know, the ability to influence policy to steer our city in a good direction, that's always attractive to me.
you know, we are running out of time this week. I had a ton of other questions to ask you, but I can't let
That's why I kept stalling.
I can't let you go without asking you about the restaurant, Peeves, because I was there the other day and I saw outdoor dining and people were outside. And, you know, for a second there, I thought, you know, am I in Fresno? Am I on the Fulton Mall? Or did I get put in Sacramento somewhere? But talk about the outdoor dining.
Yeah, it passed unanimously by the City Council last February, the same day that they voted to open up the Fulton Mall. So it didn't get any coverage because it was the same day and the mall stole all the spotlight. So yeah, you can sit outside. We have tables and chairs out on the mall, and you can even eat and have a glass of wine or a beer out on the mall, just like in every great city you love to visit. So that's a big policy change, an example of policy change.
Are you seeing that downtown is changing for the better?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and again, I can't let you go without asking you about the restaurant and without asking you about downtown. But are we seeing downtown get changed for the better? Because you still have some people out there that are naysayers that are saying, you'll never change downtown Fresno, it's Fresno.
You know what they say, lead, follow, or get out of the way, and that's it. I think the people that are downtown, if you ask them, it would be unanimous that they're seeing change almost month by month. Last Art Hop, we were open. There's a new restaurant, Take 3 Burgers, that was open. We had a pop-up art gallery, and the Mexican restaurant stayed open at night on the Fulton Mall. Usually we're the only one. Now all of a sudden we have 4 open on the same night. More and more housing being built and opened as we speak. And we're getting more and more investors. Someone just bought the old portion of the old Gottschalk's building last week.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I know. So those kinds of things are happening. I mean, the buildings are being purchased just almost, you know, week in, week out, we're getting another investor. So it takes a while for that investor to then figure out how they're going to build it and who their tenants are going to be, and then all of a sudden you have new businesses. That has its own pace too, but as the mall opens up, that will just go faster and faster.
And are we seeing more people live down there? Because, one thing I've noticed is I work downtown. And so usually, last year, I wouldn't have seen this. People walking in the morning, their dogs, or jogging in the morning.
Pushing a stroller, all of that, yeah.
Now, when I get to work, it happened actually this morning, as a matter of fact. It was kind of chilly out, but there was this young lady running with her dog, and I noticed, you know what? This is downtown.
See that
I didn't see that a few years ago. Is it happening?
It is. You're seeing it all over. All of these Granville urban projects are high occupancy. They're getting really great rents. We've got the Housing Authority Workforce Housing at Venice and Inyo that will be opening up with another 40-some units. And you're just going to continue to see more of that. It's actually, they're getting higher rents than they are in North Fresno in many cases. This is a very desirable thing.
Circling back to the elections, and we have a couple of minutes to talk. So, any surprises, or do you think there were anything in the election that made people say, "Wow, what happened there"?
Well, I think the big surprise for people was the Jim Costa race. He had a close call a couple of elections ago, but it was a pretty hard contested one. It looks like they didn't think this one would be that close, and John Teixeira came through and ran a really competitive campaign, and so Jim was losing on election night, but it looks like he's picking up again, but that was a nail-biter I don't think anyone saw coming.
Now, I know
except John.
Yeah, and I know that you can't answer for Mr. Teixeira or Mr. Costa, but both of them concerned, or what would, take us into their mind.
Yeah, well, when I won, I think I won by 250 votes, and when I lost by 250 votes. That's very close. Yeah, it's hard to deal with, and especially, again, you're kind of in that almost like dream state. It's really hard to process information. You have people giving you their opinions all around you. It's unless you've been there, it's kind of hard to imagine.
So 1 minute you're like, okay, feels good that I'm ahead, and then 1 minute you're down, and it can go either way.
Right, it can go either way, and we saw that with District 1. It was a 20-vote spread, I think, on election night, and the leader ended up, it's tipped the other way. So that's every vote counts. You want to make sure. I think in the District 7 race 10 years ago, there were something like 20 or 30 votes between candidates. So you think, if I could have had one more day and gotten those extra 20 voters out there,
and it would have been a life-changing experience.
Yep, absolutely.
Craig, we're out of time. I had a ton of other questions to ask you, but somehow you and I, when we talk, we ended up going on tangents.
We'll just keep talking at Peeves after the show.
We will. That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To our volunteer crew that made this and every production possible, thank you. We couldn't do this show without you. To our guest, Craig Scharton, former city councilman, local businessman, former downtown czar, thank you for coming today on the program.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you to you listening to our program on 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno, and to watching this program on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. Hope you enjoyed this program. We will be back next week for a new edition.